So before Guy comes on stage, let me give a brief introduction, even though he doesn't really need it. So Guy's probably one of the most storied figures in Silicon Valley over at least the last 20 years. And I had the pleasure of meeting Guy 13 years ago when he came to London. I was working for a venture capital firm called 3i. And 3i at the time was the biggest VC on the planet. We had about 1,000 staff worldwide. And we're in a 13-story building. And Guy walks in and it's like, wow, who works on the rest of the floors? And it's like, well, this is all 3i. It's like, gee, I've seen the future of venture capital. Now, 3i is not in the venture capital business anymore, so that was a defining moment for me as well. But Guy probably is most famous in recent years for working with Garage Technology Ventures. And most of you may also know that Guy was the technology evangelist for Apple. So again, a personal connection with Steve Jobs. So with that, I'd like to introduce Guy Kawasaki. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Although arguably it's not a good morning because the passing of Steve Jobs has definitely left a large hole in the universe. And I worked for him from 1983 to 1987, and then from 1995 to 1997, I worked for Apple again. And just as he came back towards the end of 1997, so we overlapped again. So arguably, I'm one of the few people in the world who've worked for Steve Jobs twice and survived. So I consider it an honor to have worked for him. He fundamentally changed my life. He changed the lives of many Apple employees. And he also changed the lives, I think, of many, many people in the computer business, in the phone business, in the tablet business, in many places, in the music business. So if you look at your agenda, I'm supposed to give a speech today about how to enchant people, how to be an enchanting person, to change people's hearts, minds, and actions. But because of Steve's death yesterday, this morning I wrote a completely new speech. And so you're not going to see what's on the agenda. I have a speech that's sort of dedicated to what I learned from Steve Jobs, and I think the lessons of Steve Jobs that you can apply to your startups. Because fundamentally, Steve was, arguably the world's greatest CEO, the world's greatest entrepreneur. I don't think anybody did any more for his customers or shareholders or employees than Steve Jobs. Truly, truly, no one has done more. So I have compiled the top 12 lessons that I learned and that I think all of you can apply to your companies. And so I have 12 key points. Usually I have 10, so there's a little bit of inflation in my speech. I use the top 10 format because in the last 2.5 decades I've seen so many high-tech executives speak. And I can tell you there are two key points about high-tech speakers, other than you, of course. The two key points are they suck and they go long. And that's a bad combination. If you suck and you're short, it's okay. And if you're good and you go long, it's okay. But if you suck and go long, it's like being stupid and arrogant. It's a bad combination. So these are my lessons that I learned from Steve Jobs. And I think that you can apply as entrepreneurs. So lesson number 1. Experts are clueless. If you start listening to these so-called experts, the A-listers, the journalists, the analysts, they cannot help you as entrepreneurs. They're going to tell you to do better sameness, to do what everybody else thinks is right. They're going to tell you what their concept is, often from a very arrogant point of view. Usually they're disconnected from customers. I cannot tell you, Steve Jobs did not listen to experts. Quite the contrary. Experts listened to him. And you could make the case that that's even more true today because of social media. That with Twitter and Facebook and Google+, you can get so much closer to people, so much faster, that to listen to the interpretation of experts and the pronouncements of experts is an absolute mistake. Pretty much, and I learned this from Steve, I watched him in action. Experts are clueless, especially people who declare themselves experts. You meet someone who calls himself or herself a social media expert or guru, that's the person to avoid. Okay? As an entrepreneur, you're going to have to figure stuff out by yourself. Don't rely on others. So that's first thing. Second thing, pretty much customers cannot tell you what they need. If we had asked customers in 1983 what they needed, they would have said, I need a bigger, faster, cheaper Apple II. Or I need a bigger, faster, cheaper MS-DOS machine. No one would have said, give us a cute little graphics toy that was slow, that had no software, thanks to me, that couldn't use any of the industry standards, which had a little mouse instead of cursor keys, that had a graphical user interface with a trash can in the lower right-hand corner. No one could have described that. And so you can ask customers about how to evolve something that you've already shipped, how to make a revolution better, but I don't think you can ask a customer how to create a revolution, because customers are going to describe what they want in terms of better, cheaper, 10% improvement. If you truly want to change the world, if you truly want to be a great entrepreneur, you cannot listen to customers, honestly. I mean, you know, the day that you hear that Apple's using focus groups to decide on its future products, that's the day to short Apple stock. I'll tell you right now. Customers cannot tell you what they need. Second thing, the third thing is that, you know, quite to perhaps people's surprise, what I learned in the Macintosh division, working with those 100 or so other great people, was that we rose to the occasion. We did our best work in our careers because we were presented with the biggest challenge. And so rather than trying to break things down into bite-sized, small little things, I think you should give your employees and your co-founders magnificent challenges, just huge challenges, because that's truly why and how you get the best work out of people. If you ask an employee of Apple, you know, why do they put up with some of, shall I say, the challenges of working at Apple? They will tell you that despite all the challenges, the reason why they work at Apple is because Apple enables you to do the best work of your career. And so if you provide your employees with this challenge, a big challenge, they will rise up and do the best work of their career. So big challenges is what you should present. Next thing I learned is that design counts. In a world where everybody's talking about price, lots of people care about design. Lots of people do. And this is something that's probably contrary to what most experts will tell you. Most experts will tell you there's a price point and people are price sensitive, and there's this, you know, curve of demand. And I think to a great degree Apple has disproved that. Design counts. There is an element of people, maybe it's only 10% of the people, but 10% of the people truly care about design. So you should care about design. Don't put out crap. I have tried to enchant people with great stuff, and I have tried to enchant people with crap. And let me tell you, it is a lot easier to enchant people with great stuff than crap. So, you know, don't think of human interface and design as simply like a little layer on top of your great engineering algorithms. For what it is the product for most people. It's not the great algorithm. It's the skin of it. That's what counts. Design truly does count. Steve Jobs has proven that 5 times. Macintosh, iPhone, iPod, iPad. You could make the case that many other companies could have done what he did, starting with Xerox PARC. But let's face it, you know, Steve understood, Steve had the vision, Steve had this ability to anticipate what customers need before they could articulate it. Design counts. Next thing I learned is that in your presentations, it's a very simple algorithm. Use big graphics and big font. It's probably contrary to most of your PowerPoint pitches. You're using 8, 10, or 12, right? And you're going to read your slide. And you're going to put up a competitive matrix. And there's going to be your column and your competitor's column. And guess what? Your column is going to be completely checked off, and your competitor's column is going to be full of holes. And that's going to be in an 8-point font, and no one can read it. You know, Steve Jobs puts up slides that have one word: He has slides that, his minimum font size seems to be about 60 points. How many of you have slides with 60-point minimum font? Probably not many. Big graphics, big font. If you go look at the archives of Steve Jobs' keynotes. Big graphics, big font. 8-point font is out. Next thing I learned is that if you truly want to be an entrepreneur and innovator, you have to jump curves. You don't do things 10% better. You do things 10 times better. I'll give you some classic examples of curve jumping. First, we'll start with a historical one. There used to be an ice harvesting business. In the ice harvesting business in the 1900s, this meant that Bubba and Junior would go to a frozen lake or a frozen pond in the winter and cut blocks of ice. And in 1900, 9 million pounds of ice was harvested in the United States. 33 years later was the beginning of the ice factory curve. The ice factory curve now meant that you didn't have to be in the winter. You didn't have to live in a cold city. You could freeze water centrally any time of year, and then the ice man would deliver ice to your house. So imagine the advantage of going from ice harvester, cold city, cold time of year, to ice factory, any city, any time of year. Fast forward another 20 years, now we have the refrigerator curve. This is ice 3.0. Ice 3.0 meant that you had your personal ice factory. You didn't go to a centralized ice factory, or the centralized ice factory didn't deliver ice to you. You had your own ice factory. You had a PC, if you will, a personal chiller. And so if you look at this, the great values, the great innovation occurred because people went from one curve to the next curve. Actually, I said that incorrectly. Very few people went from ice harvester to ice factory to refrigerator curve. Most people, they were ice harvesters. They defined their business as ice harvesting. They died on it as the ice harvester. Then there were ice factory curves. People on the ice factory curves defined their business as we freeze water centrally and then we deliver it. Those people died as ice factories. They did not become refrigerator companies. And refrigerator companies are not looking at biotech. So one very important lesson is if you really want to change the world, you can't necessarily do it on the curve you're on. If you're on this particular curve and you try to do something 10% better, it's not good enough. If you were the best daisy wheel printer company, you said, next year we'll be really innovative. We'll introduce 3 more typefaces in 3 more font sizes. That's incremental. What truly is a curve jump is to go from daisy wheel printer to laser printer. If you were the best telegraph company, it's not to have better telegraphs, it's to be telephone company. Ice factories to refrigerator. Jump curves. It's not about 10% better, it's about 10 times better. The real innovation happens on the next curve, not on the curve you're on. Next thing I learned is that all that really matters is something works or it doesn't work. In other words, don't worship religions and fads. You know, at one point, Apple believed that a closed system would work. At one point, it believed an open system would work. Apple was never sort of stuck on whether we follow the open model or the closed model. All that mattered to Apple and Steve was it either worked or it didn't work, not that it was open or not open. A very good example with the iPhone. Many people don't remember this, but when the iPhone first came out, third-party apps were not permitted. The Apple story for a third-party app on the iPhone initially was Safari plugin. That was the answer. And the whole pitch was, with a phone, unlike a computer, which didn't make any sense to me at the time, with a phone, unlike a computer, a phone is a very complex thing. Lots of messages coming in, phone calls coming in on this constant data network. You don't really want to screw around with a phone and let third-party apps interfere with the quality of your phone experience. So we're locking out third-party apps. If you want to do anything as a third-party developer, it has to be through our browser as a Safari plugin. Okay? That was story number 1 with the iPhone. 6 months go by. Open up the iPhone, and they declare victory again. And they say, we're opening up the iPhone, we have had such demand and such interest in creating third-party apps, we realized that we need to do this for the benefit of our customers and the benefit of developers. It's now an open system. You can develop apps. It doesn't have to be a Safari, a plugin. Apple completely reversed itself. Where it's stuck on the religion of closedness, it would have stuck to closedness. Where it's stuck on the religion of openness, it would have, well, arguably it would have started with openness. The point here is that what Apple and Steve Jobs has proven is that what really matters is not whether it's open or closed, no matter what sort of industry jargon is being used. What truly matters is it works or it doesn't work. You know, is the iOS App Store an open or closed system? Well, you could make the case that it's an open system because anybody can write an app. You could make the case that it's a closed system because unless somebody at Apple approves your app, it's not going to go into the store. And if it doesn't go into the store, unless you have a jailbroken iPhone, you can't install it. Again, work or doesn't work is all that truly matters. Next thing is, for a long, long time, people used to beat Steve up and Apple about price. Macintosh was too expensive. iPhone is too expensive. iPad is too expensive. You know, you can get a cheaper iPad from BlackBerry. You can get a cheaper iPad from HTC. You can get a cheaper iPad from HP, depending on whether HP has discontinued it or not that day. So, you know, I think what Steve has proven is that there are a class of person that cares about value, which is different than price. Arguably, a Macintosh is more expensive. But is it truly more expensive when you consider the increased productivity, the ease of use, the less support costs? So Apple is testimony that, you know, value is very different from price. If you compete on price as an entrepreneur, it's a very, very difficult thing. I want you to think of a 2x2 matrix, okay? And in this 2x2 matrix, of course, you want to be in the upper right-hand corner because if anybody who worked for McKinsey or went to a business school, you know in a 2x2 matrix, you're always in the upper right-hand corner, right? That's just where it is. So the parameters on this matrix are uniqueness vertically and value horizontally. Okay? So in the upper right-hand corner, you are unique and valuable. That's where you want to be. Only you produce your product, and it is a very valuable product. The problem is many other people are in the other three corners. Let's discuss the other three corners. Let's say you're at the bottom right corner. In the bottom right corner, this means that you are in fact valuable, but not unique. In the valuable but not unique corner, you're going to have to compete on price. If you slap the same operating system on the same hardware, guess what? You compete on price. In the opposite corner, the upper left corner, in the upper left corner, you're unique but not valuable. In other words, you're just plain stupid. You have created a product that nobody cares about. Only you have created it, but nobody uses it because it is of zero value. The bottom left corner is where you're unique and not valuable. Excuse me, I said that wrong. The bottom right corner is where you're not valuable and you're not unique. So this would be a corner where you do something really stupid, and stupid people like me in the venture capital business has funded more competition to do the same stupid thing. Okay? That's the worst corner of all. You could make that case about, let's say, Pets.com. Hopefully you're old enough to remember Pets.com. So Pets.com, 10 or 15 years ago. The pitch was, we have patent-pending, curve-jumping, paradigm-shifting way to sell dog food online. The dog food business is fundamentally a supply chain management business. Dog food business. Let me explain it to you. On one side, we have a cow. On the other side, we have a dog. All we need to do is kill the cow, cut it into little pieces, put it in a can, get it to the dog. How hard could that be? So why was there a pet food store in the middle sucking up 25% of the margin? Revolutionary thought. Let's eliminate the pet food store in the middle, because nobody wants to drive to a pet food store, park at the pet food store, look at the pet food, pick up the pet food, and drive it to their house. Right? So let's eliminate that stupidity in the supply chain. That's our value. We make pet food much more convenient. The problem with that is that pet food is not so good online. For one thing, you may eliminate the pet food store, but then you have to add back shipping and handling. And then it's kind of inconvenient to buy pet food online because you have to be at home when UPS drops off the dead cows in the cans. So it's no more cheaper, and it's a pain in the ass because you have to be at home when the dead cows in the cans come to your house. So it's not that valuable. And then there was Pets.com, and so since there was Pets.com, then venture capitalists figured, well, we need our own Pets.com, so that's why there was iPets.com, ePets.com, LastMinutePets.com, DiscountPets.com. There's 16 ways to spend as much money for dog food online as at the pet food store and have the added inconvenience of having to be home when the pet food came to your house. That's the .com corner. Not unique, not valuable. So the corner you want to be in is the upper right-hand corner. If you're an engineer, you have to create a unique product or service. If you're a marketer, you have to convince the world that it is unique and valuable. It's that simple. I'll give you some examples of products that are in that corner for me. I love to go to movies. I have 4 kids. We love to take our kids to the movies. One thing you'll learn taking kids to the movies, it is a pain in the ass to get 4 kids to the movies. So you really want to know before you go that you have tickets. We live in Atherton. We go to Redwood City 20. Redwood City 20, you can buy tickets at home using Fandango. That's the only service that theater supports. Therefore, it's unique. If I want to buy tickets online and print them at home, I have to use Fandango. Unique. It's also valuable because now I know that I have a ticket before I get to the theater. I also skip the ticket buying line. I go straight into the theater. For me, that Fandango is unique and valuable. This is a Breitling emergency watch. This watch, if you unscrew this big knob, you pull it out, there's an antenna. That antenna broadcasts the emergency signal at the 121.5 band. And this signal is caught by airplanes. So if I'm ever in a life-threatening situation, I've gone skiing and I've gone off the path, I'm sailing and I'm like lost or something like that, I could pull this and this watch could save my life. This is not something you do, you took Rengstorff instead of Shoreline coming here today. This is something you do when you're about to die. This is a very unique watch. This watch can save my life. High and to the right. This watch is not the cheapest watch. But arguably, if you are in those kind of situations, the value is so great that the price becomes less relevant. Steve Jobs taught me that value is different from price. Next thing, Steve Jobs taught me that A players hire A players. B players hire C players. When you hire a C player, guess what a C player hires? A D player. Guess what a D player hires? An E player. This is called the bozo explosion. Okay? You need to fight the bozo explosion. Right now, you're all small companies. You're thinking you're hiring A players. The moment you lower your standards and hire a B player is when the bozo explosion starts. You hire a B player, the B player is going to say, I have to hire people who are not as good as me because they would show me up. They would be better than me. They might rise above me. So B players hire C players. And then the C players get in a position of hiring. Guess who they hire? The D players. And you wake up one day and you will be freaking surrounded by bozos. That is a bad thing. In fact, I think I have a way to improve what Steve said. I think A players hire A plus players. That arguably you would hire people better than you, not just equal to you. And I'll tell you, my experience is engineers have the hardest time with this concept. And the reason why is that engineers think that engineering is hard and everything else is easy. Right? So typically when you meet an engineer, the engineer says, engineering is really hard, programming is really hard, design is really hard, but finance is easy. If I wanted to, I could be the CFO. If I wanted to, I could be the CMO. If I wanted to, I could be the VP of operations. If I wanted to be, I could be the vice president of sales. Because engineering is hard, everything else is easy. So an engineer in particular violates this because an engineer is always trying to hire people for positions that they think they can do better. It's a very dangerous thing. If you're an engineer, be very cognizant. Let me tell you something. Finance ain't easy. Sales ain't easy. Marketing ain't easy. And ops ain't easy. Engineering ain't easy either. But, don't denigrate the other positions. Hire people who are better than you. If you are the CEO, you should say with great pride that I have someone in charge of sales who's better at sales than I am. And if you are the CEO, you should hire someone who you could say, I hired a VP of marketing, and this VP of marketing is much better than I am at marketing. That should be a source of pride for you. Next thing is, real CEOs can demo. Seriously, real CEOs can demo. It's not bullshit MBAs, that you brought them in because of their credentials. Real CEOs can demo. They can actually use the product. And I've sat in many, many pitches where CEOs come in and they say, well, now I'm going to let my VP of engineering demo the product. Like, why? Can't you demo it? Don't you know how to do it? If you really want to be a great CEO, you have to demo your own product. You can't demo your own product, quit. Something's wrong with you. Real CEOs do demos. Steve Jobs proved that. Nobody could do a demo better than Steve Jobs. It's going to be one of Tim Cook's biggest challenges. Real CEOs can demo. Next thing. Real entrepreneurs ship, not slip. They ship. My theory is taken off from Bobby McFerrin. Bobby McFerrin had a great song, Don't Worry, Be Happy. Real entrepreneurs, don't worry, be crappy. Which is, when you have jumped curves, when you've gone from ice harvesting to ice factory to refrigerator company, when you've gone from daisy wheel printer to laser printer, the first version of the laser printer can have elements of crappiness to it. Right? The first laser printer from Apple was $7,000. Slow Apple Talk network, single-sided, no envelopes, 8.5 by 11 only, right? Piece of crap, but it was a revolutionary piece of crap. If we had waited for the perfect world of double-sided, envelope feeding, multiple, megabytes of RAM, faster network, we would have never shipped. So as an entrepreneur, you have to understand that you need to ship. You need to ship. Don't worry, be crappy. I am not saying ship a piece of crap. I'm saying ship something that's jumped curves that has elements of crappiness to it. Big difference, okay? But real entrepreneurs truly do ship. And the last thing I learned from Steve Jobs is some things need to be believed to be seen. Most of the time you hear this in the opposite way, which is some things need to be seen to be believed. Not for an entrepreneur. This is how it works for an entrepreneur. You have to believe in your product, you have to ship your product, and then people will see it, and you will see it. And if you don't believe, it'll never happen. If you wait for proof, it will never happen. If you wait for customer validation, it will never happen. You have to believe. The reason why Macintosh was successful is that at the core, 100 people, starting with Steve Jobs, believed in Macintosh. And because we believed in Macintosh, we made it real, which is very different than if Macintosh was real, then we would believe it. If that were the case, Macintosh would never have succeeded. You have to believe in some things if you want to see some things. So, what time is it? Perfect timing, 22. So, this is the 12 lessons that I learned from Steve. And can we take Q&A? Yeah, I would love to take Q&A. Usually if I gave you my enchantment speech, I'd be pushing it. It would take 1 hour. So this is unusual. I have time to do Q&A. So let's do Q&A.
First of all, thanks for sharing your lessons and your insights.
Thank you.
I've heard you speak many times, and it's always enlightening. My question is regarding the point about A players need to hire A-plus players.
Yes.
And this is a point that has been stated several times by many individuals, that hire people better than you. What are your suggestions regarding people developing the emotional understanding that they have to let go? It's not about them, it's about hiring the best talent in terms of getting the best people.
Yeah. One of the things that is, I think, most difficult for a CEO and a founder is letting go.